The only thing that you need to know about Skin Elegies is that it's made up of 9 intersecting narratives about moments in history in the 20th and 21st centuries, those moments that in many ways made the 20th and 21st centuries themselves. We'll be listening to a piece this evening, at least this evening my time, about the Fukushima disaster in 2011. And the only thing that you need to know about it is that the protagonist's name is Hamari, and she teaches English and math in a high school in Fukushima. Also that it's written as a cell phone novel, so it looks strange on the page, a lot closer to, let's say, poetry than it does to conventional fiction. And we pick up with Hamari, the earthquake already having happened. Hamari goes home to rescue her parents, and it begins like this. Age had made my father denser, heavier, unwieldy, my mother airier, less cluttered, as if most of her body had already gone on somewhere else. They progressed methodically, each movement a difficult quadratic equation. Shuffling them toward the staircase, I repeated how we had to hurry. I gripped my mother by the elbow, helped her down to the ground floor, then dashed back up for my father. We were in the living room, baby stepping toward the front door when the tsunami hit. The door exploded off its hinges. A wall of seawater rushed us. I reached out for my parents. Hamari, my father said, and the living room was churning with chairs, a couch, planks of wood, pillows, newspapers, shingles, a toaster oven, a bright red gas tank. We held hands momentarily. Then the waves tore us apart. I heard my mother's screaming. She couldn't breathe as I scrabbled onto the counter. The water rose to my neck in seconds, splashed into my mouth. I was forced to tilt back my head to catch a breath. I recall thinking, this is how I will die. Of all the ludicrous possibilities, this is how my death will find me. Standing there on the countertop, bracing my palms against the ceiling to steady myself, taking in little gulps of air, my goal was to get through the next 5 seconds, then the next 5, then the next. I am astounded now by how I was utterly unable to imagine what I couldn't imagine. I'm sure by that time, no matter what you had been doing, with whom you had been speaking, you were fixated on the real-time coverage rushing you, just like the rest of the country, unable to take your eyes off the screen, somewhere inside of which I was living. From here on out, you know very well what happens next, don't you? The linked catastrophes of those disabled emergency generators, serving the reactors, the hydrogen air explosions, the term cesium-137 suddenly everyday usage, the term exclusion zone, the photo of that starving dog still chained on someone's deck, of the perfectly intact Coca-Cola vending machine standing alone in tall grass. You don't need me for that. It's just as well. I'm sure you are near the end of your commute, reading more quickly than you should be, to finish this before the train pulls into your stop. At this point, I could be somebody else. I could be anybody else. Now you are part of the story, without being part of the story. Now you have lost your parents too, even though they are perhaps still alive. If they are still with you, you will lose them some other day, but there is no doubt you will lose them. This is how the present works. We are all features of tales we will never be features of. At this point, the story is nobody's. At this point, the story is everybody's. Nowadays, I teach the same students in a different drab building in a different drab town, the same equations I always teach. After work on Fridays, I return to my new apartment and listen to Miles Davis, or sometimes Coltrane, on my couch in the living room, not thinking, pleasantly brain dead, over a beer and bowl of ramen. That's not the strange thing. That's not part of this. It's just how stories work. Every story ends in a spill of white space. Every story ends in silence. The strange thing is how once upon a time we believed deeply Hiroshima could only be visited upon us from the outside by dreadful intensities. Or maybe how I didn't really know, not in any way that matters, that meeting is always the start of leaving. The strange thing is how once upon a time I didn't even know what a story was. I thought I did, but I was wrong, as you are now. I didn't know this. I didn't know stories are the events that happen to other people. When they happen to you, they're simply called the world.